Unexpected encounter. Dr. Elias Chen squinted at the computer screen, his fingers flying over the keyboard as he input another series of complex equations. The soft glow of the monitor illuminated his tired face, casting shadows across the cramped observatory. Outside, the New Mexico desert stretched endlessly under a canopy of stars. A sudden beep from one of his instruments broke his concentration. Elias frowned, wheeling his chair across to the source of the noise. It was the radio telescope, picking up an unusual signal. He adjusted some dials, his frown deepening. This wasn't like anything he'd ever encountered before. As he worked to isolate and amplify the signal, a shimmering light filled the small room. Elias spun around, his eyes widening in disbelief. A figure was materializing before him, tall and ethereal, with skin that seemed to glow with an inner light and hair that flowed like liquid starlight. "Greetings, Earth Dweller," the figure spoke, its voice melodious yet tinged with urgency. "I am Queen Zora of the Celestial Realm. I come seeking aid in our darkest hour." Elias gaped, his mind reeling. This had to be a hallucination, right? Too many late nights, too much coffee. He pinched himself, wincing at the sharp pain. Nope, definitely awake. I'm Dr. Elias Chen," he managed to stammer out. "Are you really an alien?" Queen Zora's luminescent eyes regarded him with a mixture of amusement and impatience. "Indeed I am, Dr. Chen, and I'm afraid I don't have time for the usual pleasantries of first contact. My people are dying, and you may be our only hope." Elias blinked rapidly, trying to process this information. "Me? But I'm just an astronomer. How could I possibly help an advanced alien civilization?" The alien queen's form flickered slightly, and she stumbled, catching herself on the edge of Elias's desk. "Our scientists have determined that human DNA contains a unique genetic sequence that could counteract the plague ravaging our people. But it's not just any human DNA we need. It's yours, Dr. Chen." Elias felt his knees go weak, and he collapsed back into his chair. "My DNA, but why me?" Queen Zora straightened, her ethereal beauty marred by the strain evident on her face. "Your work in astrobiology, your unique genetic makeup, it's all led to this moment. The fate of my entire species rests in your hands." Before Elias could formulate a response, alarms began blaring throughout the observatory. Red lights flashed, and the sound of approaching vehicles filled the air. "They found me," Queen Zora hissed, her eyes darting to the windows. "Your government's secret agencies. They've been tracking my energy signature." Elias's mind raced. This was insane, absolutely insane. But as he looked into Queen Zora's pleading eyes, he felt something shift inside him. Here was the adventure he'd always dreamed of, the chance to make a real difference in the universe. "What do we do?" he asked, surprised by the steadiness in his voice. Queen Zora held out her hand, a small smile playing at her lips. "We run, Dr. Chen, and then we fly." Without hesitation, Elias took her hand. The world around them began to shimmer and blur, reality itself seeming to bend and twist. For a terrifying moment, Elias felt as if he was being pulled apart at the atomic level. Then, with a rush of displaced air, they materialized in a new location. Elias stumbled, his head spinning as his vision cleared. He found himself standing in what could only be the interior of a spaceship. Sleek, organic curves melded seamlessly with pulsing crystalline structures. Holographic displays flickered to life around them, filled with symbols he couldn't begin to comprehend. "Welcome aboard the Starweaver," Queen Zora said, moving swiftly to a central console. Her fingers danced over the controls, bringing the ship to life. "I've engaged our cloaking systems. We should be undetectable to your planet's scanning technology." Elias's mind reeled as he tried to process everything that had happened in the last few minutes. "Okay, hold on," he said, holding up his hands. "I think I'm going to need some explanations here. Who are you really? Why are you on Earth? And what exactly do you need my DNA for?" Queen Zora sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. For a moment, the regal alien facade slipped, and Elias caught a glimpse of genuine worry in her eyes. "You're right," she said softly. "You deserve the truth. Please, sit down. This may take some time to explain." Elias lowered himself into what he assumed was a chair, though it seemed to mold itself to his body as he sat. Queen Zara remained standing, her starlight hair swirling gently as if moved by an unseen breeze. "As I said, I am Queen Zara of the Celestial Realm. My people are an ancient race, guardians of peace and knowledge across much of this galaxy. But we are dying, Dr. Chen. A plague, engineered by our enemies, is destroying us from within." She waved her hand, and a holographic display sprang to life between them. Elias watched in horrified fascination as it showed a beautiful humanoid figure slowly disintegrating, its body seeming to turn to ash from the inside out. "Our best scientists have searched the far reaches of the galaxy for a cure," Queen Zara continued, her voice tight with emotion. "Finally, we discovered hope in the most unlikely of places, Earth. More specifically in your DNA." Elias's brow furrowed. "My DNA? What could I possibly have that your advanced civilization doesn't?" A small smile played at the corners of Queen Zara's lips. "You, Dr. Elias Chen, possess a unique genetic marker. It's a result of a 1 in a billion mutation, combined with your work in astrobiology. Your DNA has the potential to create an antidote to the plague, but it requires intimate contact to be effective." Elias's eyes widened as the implications sank in. "Intimate, you mean?" Queen Zara nodded, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "Yes, to save my people, I must mate with you, Dr. Chen. And not just that. We must undergo an ancient bonding ritual, one that will merge our genetic codes at the most fundamental level." Elias' mouth opened and closed several times, no sound coming out. His mind raced, trying to process this bombshell of information. Part of him wondered if this was all some elaborate prank, or if he had finally cracked under the pressure of work and was hallucinating the whole thing. "So let me get this straight," he finally managed. "You need to have sex with me to save your entire species from extinction." Queen Zara winced slightly at his blunt phrasing. "It's a bit more complicated than that, but essentially, yes. I understand this is overwhelming, and I want you to know that I would never force you into anything. If you choose to help us, it must be of your own free will." Elias stood up abruptly, pacing the small space. His mind whirled with conflicting thoughts and emotions. On one hand, this was absolutely insane. He was just a normal guy, a slightly nerdy astronomer who could barely handle talking to women at university mixers. How was he supposed to deal with the pressure of saving an alien race? But on the other hand, wasn't this exactly the kind of adventure he'd always dreamed about? The chance to be a hero, to make a real difference in the universe. And if he was being completely honest with himself, the idea of getting intimate with the stunningly beautiful alien queen wasn't exactly a hardship. "What about the government agents you mentioned?" he asked, stalling for time as he tried to sort out his thoughts. "Won't they be looking for us?" Queen Zara's expression darkened. "Yes, and not just your Earth governments. There are factions across the galaxy that would stop at nothing to capture me, to study and exploit our technology. I cannot allow that to happen." As if on cue, an alarm began to blare throughout the ship. Queen Zara rushed to the console, her fingers flying over the controls. "They found us," she said, her voice tight with tension. "Earth vessels are approaching rapidly. We need to leave orbit immediately." Elias's heart raced. This was it, the point of no return. Stay and return to his safe, predictable life, or go and embark on an adventure beyond his wildest dreams. He took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. "What do you need me to do?" Queen Zara's eyes met his, filled with gratitude and something else, a spark of connection that sent a shiver down Elias's spine. "Take the seat next to me," she instructed. "We're going to have to outrun them." As Elias strapped himself in, the ship hummed to life around them. Through the viewscreen, he watched as the Earth, his home, grew smaller and smaller. "Hold on tight," Queen Zara said, a hint of excitement creeping into her voice. "Things are about to get interesting." The stars blurred into streaks of light as the Star Weaver leaped into faster-than-light travel. Elias's stomach lurched, but a grin spread across his face. Whatever happened next, he knew his life would never be the same. As they hurtled through the cosmos, leaving Earth far behind, Elias couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Here he was, a socially awkward astronomer, suddenly thrust into the role of savior for an alien civilization, and all because he happened to have the right DNA and a penchant for late-night stargazing. "Something amusing, Dr. Chen?" Queen Zara asked, raising an eyebrow as she skillfully piloted the ship through the star-streaked void. Elias shook his head, still chuckling. "Just this whole situation, you know. When I woke up this morning, I was worried about calibrating radio telescopes. Now I'm on a spaceship, running from the government, about to embark on a mission to save an alien race through our intimate means." A small smile played at the corners of Queen Zara's lips. "I suppose it is rather extraordinary from your perspective, though I must admit, I find your Earth customs equally perplexing. For instance, this Netflix and chill ritual. Is it truly a common mating practice among your people?" Elias nearly choked on air. Well, it's not exactly. I mean, it can be. But," he trailed off, feeling his face grow hot. "Maybe we should focus on not getting caught by those government ships for now." "An excellent suggestion," Queen Zara agreed, her attention returning to the ship's controls. "We'll need to make a series of random jumps to throw off any pursuit. It may be a bumpy ride." As if on cue, the ship lurched violently to the side. Elias gripped his seat, his knuckles turning white. "So, how long have you been flying this thing?" he asked, trying to keep the nervousness out of his voice. Queen Zara's brow furrowed in concentration as she deftly maneuvered through a field of asteroids. "Oh, about 3 of your Earth days," she replied casually. Elias's eyes widened in alarm. 3 days? But you seemed so confident when we took off." Queen Zara shrugged, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Confidence is key in any endeavor, wouldn't you agree? Besides, I'm a quick learner." As they emerged from the asteroid field, a proximity alarm blared through the ship. A massive vessel loomed before them, easily dwarfing the Star Weaver. "Celestial cruiser," Queen Zara muttered, her expression darkening. "They must have tracked my departure from our home world." "I thought we were running from Earth government ships," Elias said, confusion and fear warring in his voice. Queen Zara's fingers danced over the controls, bringing up a series of holographic displays. "It seems we're running from multiple parties now. How exciting for you, Dr. Chen. Your first interstellar adventure is shaping up to be quite the tale." Despite the dire situation, Elias couldn't help but laugh. "You know, most first dates usually just involve dinner and a movie, but I guess fleeing from 2 different sets of pursuers across the galaxy works too." Queen Zara glanced at him, a smile tugging at her lips. "Oh, is this a date then? How delightful. I do hope I'm making a good first impression." Before Elias could formulate a response, the ship rocked violently. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. "They've locked on with a tractor beam," Queen Zara growled, her playful demeanor vanishing. "I can break free, but it's going to take all of our power. We'll be dead in space afterward." Elias's mind raced. He might not know anything about alien technology, but problem-solving was what he did best. "What if we reverse the polarity of our own energy systems?" he suggested. "Could we use their tractor beam against them, like a slingshot?" Queen Zara's eyes widened. "That's brilliant. Risky, but it just might work." Her fingers flew over the controls, implementing Elias's suggestion. "Brace yourself." The Star Weaver shuddered, caught between the pull of the tractor beam and the push of its own reversed systems. For a heart-stopping moment, Elias thought they were going to be torn apart. Then, with a surge of power, they broke free, shooting past the larger ship at impossible speeds. As they hurtled through space, Alarms blaring and systems failing around them, Elias found himself laughing again. Queen Zora joined in, her melodious voice mingling with his. "Well, Dr. Elias Chen," she said as their laughter subsided, her eyes shining with a mixture of adrenaline and admiration. "It seems I chose my human companion wisely. Perhaps there's hope for my people yet." As the Starweaver drifted, temporarily powerless but free, Elias met Queen Zora's gaze. In that moment, despite the danger and uncertainty that lay ahead, he knew he had made the right choice. Whatever happened next, this was going to be one hell of an adventure. Cosmic dance of trust. As the Starweaver drifted through the vast emptiness of space, its systems slowly coming back online, Elias found himself staring out the view screen, still trying to process the whirlwind of events that had led him here. The infinite cosmos stretched before him, a tapestry of swirling nebulae and glittering stars that would have made his astronomer's heart soar under normal circumstances. But these were far from normal circumstances. "A zenith for your thoughts, Dr. Chen." Queen Zora's melodious voice broke through his reverie. Elias turned to find her watching him, a curious expression on her otherworldly face. "A zenith?" Elias asked, raising an eyebrow. Zora's lips quirked in a small smile. "Ah, my apologies. I believe the Earth equivalent is a penny for your thoughts. Though I must say, equating cognitive processes to such a small monetary value seems rather insulting." Elias couldn't help but chuckle. "Just trying to wrap my head around all this," he admitted. "It's a lot to take in. 1 minute I'm calibrating radio telescopes, the next I'm hurtling through space with an alien queen on a mission to save her species through intimate means." "I understand," Zora said softly, her luminescent eyes filled with empathy. "Perhaps a tour of the ship would help ground you. There's much to see, and we have some time before we reach the next jump point." As they moved through the Starweaver's sleek corridors, Elias's natural curiosity began to override his shock. He peppered Zora with questions about the ship's technology, his eyes lighting up at each new discovery. "This is incredible," he'd breathed, examining a device that seemed to manipulate gravity itself. "The applications for this kind of tech are endless." Zora smiled, a warmth in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "You have quite the mind, Elias Chen. I'm impressed by how quickly you grasp these concepts." Elias felt a flush of pride at her words. It had been a long time since anyone had truly appreciated his intellect. "Thanks," he said, rubbing the back of his neck self-consciously. "I've always been good with puzzles and problems. It's why I went into astrophysics." A valuable skill, Zora mused, one that may prove crucial in the days to come. As they continued their tour, Elias couldn't help but notice the way Zora seemed to find excuses to brush against him or stand just a little too close. At first, he chalked it up to cultural differences, but when she accidentally backed into him, pressing her life body against his for a moment longer than necessary, he began to suspect there might be more to it. "Oh, my apologies," Zora said, her voice low and breathy. "These corridors are so narrow." Elias swallowed hard, his heart racing. "No problem," he managed, trying to ignore the tingling sensation where her body had touched his. Days passed in a blur of interstellar travel and crash courses in alien technology. Elias threw himself into learning everything he could about the ship, determined to make himself useful. He even managed to optimize several of the Starweaver's systems, earning him genuine praise from Zora and her small crew. One evening, as Elias was finishing up a shower in the ship's compact bathroom, the door suddenly slid open. He yelped in surprise, scrambling to cover himself as Zora stepped in, completely naked and apparently unperturbed. "Oh," she exclaimed, her eyes widening in feigned innocence. "I didn't realize the facilities were occupied. How careless of me." Elias stood frozen, water dripping down his body, acutely aware of Zora's gaze roaming over him. I was just finishing," he stammered. Zora made no move to leave. Instead, she stepped closer, reaching past him to adjust the water controls. "Since I'm here, I might as well join you," she said casually. It's more efficient this way, don't you think? Before Elias could formulate a response, Zara was standing under the spray with him, her iridescent skin glistening with water droplets. He tried desperately to keep his eyes above her neckline, but it was a losing battle. "Is this not a common practice among your people?" Zara asked, her tone innocent, but her eyes dancing with mischief. Elias let out a strangled laugh. Not usually, no." "How peculiar," Zara mused, reaching for a bottle of soap. "Here, allow me to assist you." As her soapy hands glided over his chest and shoulders, Elias's mind short-circuited. This was happening. This was actually happening. He was taking a shower with an alien queen, and she was... oh God, she was washing his back now. "You're very tense, Elias," Zara observed, her fingers working at a knot in his shoulder. "Perhaps I can help you relax." It took every ounce of Elias's willpower to step away. I think I'm clean enough," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "Thank you for the assistance." He practically fled the bathroom, his heart pounding and his thoughts in chaos. What the hell was that? Was she really interested in him? Or was this just some alien misunderstanding of human customs? As the days wore on, Zara's flirtations became increasingly bold. She seemed to delight in finding ways to touch him, to invade his personal space in ways that left him flustered and aroused. One memorable incident involved her accidentally spilling a viscous alien beverage all over his lap, then insisting on cleaning it up herself. "Oh dear, how clumsy of me," she purred, her hands lingering perhaps a bit too long in certain areas. "We mustn't let this stain your clothing." Elias squirmed, caught between embarrassment and a growing desire he couldn't quite suppress. "It's fine, really," he squeaked. "I can clean it myself." But Zara was relentless, her touch both maddening and electrifying. By the time she finished her ministrations, Elias was a blushing, stammering mess. Despite the tension building between them, Elias found himself growing genuinely fond of Zara. Behind her flirtatious exterior and regal bearing, he discovered a sharp mind and a dry wit that matched his own. They spent hours discussing everything from advanced physics to the intricacies of Earth pop culture, each fascinated by the other's perspective. As they neared their destination, however, the reality of their situation began to weigh heavily on Elias. He was falling for Zara, hard, but was any of this real? Or was he just a means to an end, a necessary component in saving her people? The Starweaver dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a shudder, revealing a breathtaking vista of swirling nebulae and shimmering planets. At the center of it all hung Zara's homeworld, a planet of impossible beauty that made Elias's heart ache with its alien majesty. "Welcome to Celestia," Zara said softly, a hint of melancholy in her voice. As they descended through the planet's atmosphere, Elias's awe quickly turned to apprehension. The spires of the royal city gleamed with an otherworldly light, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into a viper's nest. His fears were confirmed almost immediately upon their arrival. A delegation of celestial nobles met them at the spaceport, their faces masks of barely concealed disdain as they laid eyes on Elias. "Your Highness," one of them, a tall, severe-looking male, stepped forward. "We are relieved to see you return safely. But this creature you've brought with you, surely you don't mean to go through with this madness?" Zora's eyes flashed dangerously. "Mind your tone, Lord Vexer. This creature is our people's best hope for survival. You would do well to show him respect." Vexer's lip curled in a sneer. "Respect? For a primitive alien? Your time away has addled your mind, princess. The council will never agree to this. Abomination." Elias bristled at the insult, but before he could speak, Zara's hand found his, squeezing gently. The touch sent a jolt through him, grounding him in the moment. "The council will do as I command," Zara said, her voice ringing with authority. "Or have you forgotten who wears the crown?" The next few days were a whirlwind of political maneuvering and thinly veiled hostility. Elias found himself thrust into a world of alien intrigue he was woefully unprepared for. Every word, every gesture seemed loaded with hidden meaning, and he constantly felt like he was one misstep away from causing an interplanetary incident. Through it all, Zara was his anchor. She guided him through the complex web of celestial etiquette, always ready with a reassuring touch or a whispered word of encouragement. But even she couldn't shield him entirely from the cutting remarks and dismissive glances of the royal court. "I don't belong here," Elias confessed one evening, collapsing onto a ridiculously ornate couch in Zora's private chambers. "I'm just a guy who's good with numbers and stars. I don't know how to play these political games." Zora sat beside him, closer than strictly necessary. "You belong here more than any of them," she said fiercely. "You're brave and kind and brilliant. Don't let their small-mindedness make you doubt yourself." Elias looked at her, really looked at her, and felt his heart swell. In that moment, he wanted nothing more than to pull her close and kiss her. But the nagging doubt remained. Was this real, or was he just projecting his own feelings onto a situation born of necessity? "Zara," he began hesitantly, "all of this, the flirting, the touching, is it just because you need me to save your people, or is there something more?" Zara's eyes widened, a flicker of vulnerability crossing her features. For a long moment, she was silent, and Elias felt his stomach twist with anxiety. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "At first, yes, it was about duty. About doing whatever was necessary to save my people. But now," she reached out, cupping his face gently. "Now, I find myself wishing circumstances were different, that we had met under simpler terms." Elias's breath caught in his throat. "So you do feel something?" Zara nodded, a sad smile playing at her lips. "More than I should, perhaps. But Elias, you must understand. My first duty is to my people. I cannot allow personal feelings to interfere with what must be done." The words hit Elias like a physical blow. He understood, of course he did, but that didn't make it hurt any less. "Right," he said, trying to keep the bitterness from his voice. "Of course, the fate of your entire species is at stake. What's one human's feelings compared to that?" Zara flinched as if he'd struck her. "Elias, please, don't make this harder than it already is." He stood abruptly, needing space, needing air. "I think I need some time alone," he said, not meeting her eyes. "If that's allowed, Your Highness." Without waiting for a response, he strode from the room, his heart heavy and his mind in turmoil. As the door slid shut behind him, he missed the look of anguish that crossed Zara's face, the way she reached out as if to call him back. Alone in the alien corridor, surrounded by the oppressive grandeur of a world he didn't belong in, Elias felt more lost than he ever had before. He'd come to save a species, but in the process, he might just lose his heart. Little did he know, the true test of his resolve and the depth of his feelings for Zara was yet to come, for in the shadows of the celestial palace, ancient powers were stirring, and the fate of two worlds hung in the balance. Echoes of celestial destiny. The bioluminescent gardens of the celestial palace pulsed with an otherworldly rhythm, mirroring the tumultuous emotions roiling within Elias. He wandered the alien flora, each step taking him deeper into a labyrinth of shimmering leaves and crystalline flowers. The beauty around him was breathtaking, yet it only served to emphasize how out of place he felt. "Trouble in paradise, Earthling." The silky voice sent a chill down Elias's spine. He turned to find Lord Vexer regarding him with thinly veiled contempt, the celestial nobleman's lip curled in a familiar sneer. "I'm fine," Elias muttered, not in the mood for the alien's barbs. Vexer's eyes narrowed. "Are you? You don't look fine. You look like a man who's just realized he's in over his head." Elias bristled. "What do you want, Vexer?" The nobleman circled Elias, predatory. "I want you gone, Earthling. You don't belong here. You're a primitive creature meddling in affairs beyond your comprehension." "I'm here because Zara needs me," Elias shot back, standing his ground. "To save your people." Vexer laughed, a cold, cruel sound. "Save us, you fool. Do you even know what you're agreeing to? A chill ran down Elias's spine. What are you talking about? The celestial bonding, Vexa said, his voice dripping with disdain. It's not some simple mating ritual. It's dangerous, potentially fatal for a weak species like yours. Elias's heart raced. You're lying. Am I? Vexa's eyes glittered with malice. Ask your precious queen. Ask her what happens when our kind experiences the great joining. Ask her how many of her suitors have survived it. Before Elias could respond, Vexa turned on his heel and stalked away, leaving him with a growing sense of dread. Hours later, Elias stood before Zara in her private chambers, his face a mask of hurt and betrayal. Were you ever going to tell me? Zara wouldn't meet his eyes. Elias, Don't, he cut her off. Just don't. Vexa told me everything. The celestial bonding, the danger. How could you keep this from me? Zara's shoulders slumped. I was afraid, she whispered. Afraid that if you knew the truth, you'd leave. And without you, my people are doomed. Elias laughed bitterly. So that's all I am to you. A sacrificial lamb. No, Zara's eyes flashed with pain. You're so much more than that, Elias. I care for you deeply. That's why I can't go through with this. I won't risk your life. Elias stared at her, conflict raging within him. Part of him wanted to walk away, to wash his hands of this whole insane situation. But as he looked at Zara, saw the anguish in her otherworldly eyes, he knew he couldn't abandon her or her people. I'll do it, he said quietly. Zara's head snapped up. What? No, Elias, you can't. I can, and I will, he interrupted. You brought me here to save your people. That's what I'm going to do, but you could die. Elias shrugged, a wry smile tugging at his lips. Well, if I'm going to go out, might as well be in a blaze of glory, right? Or shall I say, a blaze of great joining. Zara stared at him for a long moment, then burst into laughter tinged with hysteria. You impossible man, she said, shaking her head. You beautiful, brave, foolish man. The day of the celestial bonding arrived with a sense of foreboding. Elias stood before an ornate altar in the heart of the royal palace, surrounded by chanting priests and wary nobles. Zara approached, resplendent in ceremonial robes that seemed to shimmer with starlight. Are you sure about this? She whispered as she took her place beside him. Elias nodded, trying to project a confidence he didn't entirely feel. Too late to back out now. Besides, I've always wondered what a great joining feels like. Zara's lips twitched in a suppressed smile, incorrigible to the end. The head priest stepped forward, raising his arms. Let the celestial bonding begin. A swirling vortex of energy erupted from the altar, enveloping Elias and Zara. The world around them dissolved, reality itself seeming to bend and warp. When the light faded, they found themselves in a realm of pure energy, pulsing with otherworldly power. What is this place? Elias gasped, his voice echoing strangely. The heart of Celestia, Zara replied, her form shimmering and insubstantial. The source of our people's power and our curse. A booming voice reverberated through the ethereal space. Who darles dis durb the ancient Pessit? Elias squared his shoulders. We do. Elias Chen of Earth and Queen Zara of Celestia. A figure coalesced before them, a being of pure energy that radiated ancient power. The Pessit cannot be broken. It is the purity of your people's hubris, princess. What hubris? Elias demanded. What did the Celestials do to deserve this curse? Images flashed around them, visions of a vast empire spanning galaxies, worlds burning, species enslaved. Elias recoiled in horror. Your ancestors, he breathed, turning to Zara. They were conquerors. Zara nodded, her expression pained. We were taught that we were benevolent rulers, spreading civilization across the stars. But this is monstrous. The energy being's voice boomed again. The QRC voice pila ACD2 let MIT your power to PREVNT. The rise of ANOTAR tyrant. It cannot be broken. Elias's mind raced. This was about more than just saving Zora's people. It was about righting an ancient wrong, about transformation on a cosmic scale. What if there was another way? He called out. A way to ensure the Celestials never abuse their power again. The being's energy pulsed with interest. Speak, Earthling. Elias took a deep breath. On my world, we have a system called democracy. The people choose their leaders, and those leaders are accountable to the people. No one person or family holds absolute power. Interesting, the being mused. But how can we tell UST the ACLE's tiles to ADKEA to such a system? Because I'll stay, Elias said, surprising even himself. I'll work with Zara to implement these changes, to teach your people about equality, about the dangers of unchecked power. Zara gasped. Elias, you can't. He turned to her, taking her hands in his. I can, and I will. You asked me to save your people, Zara. This is how we do it. Not just from the curse, but from themselves. Tears shimmered in Zara's eyes. But what about your life on Earth? Your dreams? Elias smiled softly. My dreams? Zara, I'm living them. Adventure among the stars, the chance to make a real difference in the universe. And he hesitated, then plunged ahead, the opportunity to be with you, if you'll have me. Zara's answer was to pull him close, kissing him with a passion that sent sparks of energy dancing around them. The ancient being's voice rumbled through the ethereal realm. It ISD side ED. The QRC shall be lifted, but the power of the CLES tiles will be FOREHEVIER changed. Democracy shall flourish, and the Earthling shall remain as guardian and guide. A surge of energy washed over them, warm and revitalizing. When it faded, Elias and Zara found themselves back in the palace, surrounded by stunned onlookers. Lord Vexor pushed his way to the front, his face a mask of fury. What have you done? You've destroyed our way of life. Elias stood tall, his hand intertwined with Zara's. No, we've saved it, and improved it. It's time for a new era of celestial history, one of peace, cooperation, and shared power. As the implications of what had transpired sank in, murmurs of excitement began to ripple through the crowd. Celestials who had long chafed under the old system looked at Elias with newfound respect and hope. Zara addressed her people, her voice ringing with authority and promise. My fellow Celestials, today marks the dawn of a new age. Together, with our Earth allies, we will forge a brighter future for all. She turned to Elias, her eyes shining with love and admiration. And it all began with one brave human who dared to challenge the stars themselves. As cheers erupted around them, Elias pulled Zara close. So, he said with a grin, about that great joining. Zara laughed, a sound of pure joy. Oh, my dear Elias, that's just the beginning. And as they sealed their newfound bond with a kiss, the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, heralding the start of a cosmic revolution that would echo across the galaxy for eons to come. Starborn Revolution. The celestial capital was abuzz with an energy unlike anything in its millennia-long history. The streets, once reserved for the elite, now teemed with citizens from all walks of life, their voices raised in a cacophony of debate and hope. At the center of it all stood the unlikely pair who had sparked this cosmic revolution, Elias Chen, the human scientist turned intergalactic diplomat, and Queen Zara, last of the old guard and first of the new. I still can't believe we're doing this, Elias muttered, adjusting the elaborate celestial robes that still felt foreign on his frame. When I dreamed of changing the world, I never imagined it would be an alien one. Zara squeezed his hand, her touch sending familiar sparks of energy coursing through him. Having second thoughts, my starborn love. Elias grinned, the nervousness in his stomach mingling with excitement. Never, though I have to admit, First Citizen has a nicer ring to it than Sacrificial Lamb. Their banter was interrupted by the arrival of Vox, a young celestial who had quickly become one of their staunchest allies in the new government. "It's time," he announced, his multifaceted eyes glittering with anticipation. The Council of Voices is assembled. As they made their way to the newly constructed Forum of the People, Elias marveled at how much had changed in such a short time. The oppressive architecture of the old regime had been transformed, quite literally, overnight. Crystal spires now pulsed with the collective thoughts and emotions of the populace, a physical manifestation of the new democratic ideals. The Forum itself was a marvel of bio-organic engineering, a living, breathing space that adapted to the needs of its occupants. As Elias and Zara took their places at the center, surrounded by representatives from every corner of celestial society, he couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. "Citizens of Celestia," Zara began, her voice carrying effortlessly through the chamber, "we stand at the dawn of a new era. For too long, our people have been bound by the chains of the past, by a curse born of our ancestors' hubris. But today, we break those chains." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd, but not everyone seemed convinced. Lord Vexer, still clinging to his position by a thread, stood to speak. "Pretty words, your former majesty," he sneered. "But words alone cannot undo millennia of tradition. How can we trust that this alien," he gestured dismissively at Elias, "has our best interests at heart?" Elias felt a familiar anger rising within him, but before he could respond, an unexpected voice rang out. "I will vouch for him." All eyes turned to see an elderly celestial, her form shimmering with an inner light that spoke of great wisdom and power. "I am Elara, keeper of the ancient records, and I have seen in this human's heart a truth that many of our own people have forgotten." She approached Elias, placing a gnarled hand on his chest. In that instant, his mind was flooded with visions, the long history of the Celestials, their rise to power, their fall from grace. But more than that, he saw the potential futures branching out before them, some bright with promise, others dark with continued tyranny. "This one," Elara proclaimed, her voice echoing with otherworldly power, "carries within him the spark of change. A spark that, if nurtured, could ignite a flame of justice and equality across the stars." The Forum erupted in a chaos of voices, some cheering, others protesting. Elias, still reeling from the visions, felt Zara's steadying presence beside him. "Well," she whispered, a hint of amusement in her voice, "you certainly know how to make an impression." As the debate raged on, Elias found himself called upon to explain concepts that he had taken for granted on Earth. The idea of free elections, of a system of checks and balances, seemed utterly foreign to many Celestials. "But how can we trust the common people to make such important decisions?" one council member asked, genuinely perplexed. Elias took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "On Earth we have a saying, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. Democracy isn't easy. It requires every citizen to be engaged, to think critically, to question their leaders. But the alternative, ruled by a privileged few, has led your people to the brink of extinction." His words seemed to strike a chord, and slowly, hour by painstaking hour, a new system of government began to take shape. It wasn't perfect, no system ever is, but it was a start. As the first session of the Council of Voices drew to a close, Elias felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. The weight of what they were attempting to do, to fundamentally reshape an entire civilization, was staggering. Zara, sensing his fatigue, led him to a quiet alcove away from the dispersing crowd. "You were magnificent," she said softly, tracing the lines of worry that had formed on his brow. Elias leaned into her touch, drawing strength from her presence. "I just hope it's enough. There's so much that could go wrong." "Indeed there is," a new voice interjected. They turned to find Elara watching them, her ancient eyes twinkling with an inscrutable light. Which is why your work is far from over, Starborn. Starborn? Elias questioned, the unfamiliar title sitting strangely on his ears. Ilara smiled, a gesture that seemed to illuminate her from within. It is what you are, child of Earth, born of one world, yet destined to reshape another. The old prophecies speak of such a one, though I must admit, we always assumed it would be a celestial. Zara's grip on Elias's hand tightened. What prophecies? What aren't you telling us, Keeper? The ancient celestial's expression grew grave. The changes you have set in motion are but the first ripples in a cosmic storm. There are forces at work in the galaxy that have long profited from celestial isolation and tyranny. They will not stand idly by while you dismantle the old order. As if summoned by her words, a piercing alarm shattered the relative calm of the forum. Vox burst into the alcove, his usual composure shaken. First citizens, we're under attack. Warships have entered the system, like nothing we've ever seen before. Elias and Zara exchanged a look of determination tinged with fear. This was it, the moment when their fledgling democracy would be put to its first crucial test. Summon the council, Zara commanded, every inch the leader she was born to be. And prepare our defenses. As they raced to the command center, Ilara's words echoed in Elias's mind. Starborn. A title he never asked for, a destiny he never imagined. But as he looked at Zara, at the people they had sworn to protect, he knew there was no turning back. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as the fate of not just Celestia, but perhaps the entire galaxy hung in the balance. And at the center of it all stood a former Earth scientist, armed with nothing but his wits, his principles, and a love that defied the very laws of space and time. The battle for the soul of Celestia and the future of interstellar democracy was about to begin. Quantum uprising. The celestial command center thronged with barely contained panic as holographic displays lit up with the approaching threat. Elias stood at the heart of it all, his mind racing to process the alien technology surrounding him while simultaneously grappling with the enormity of their situation. What are we dealing with? He asked, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his insides. Vox manipulated the central holo display, zooming in on the lead ship. They're like nothing in our records. The energy signatures are impossible. Zara's eyes narrowed as she studied the readouts. No, not impossible. Forbidden. These are void harbinger vessels. A collective gasp rippled through the command center. Elias turned to Zara, confusion evident on his face. Void harbingers. Ancient enemies of the Celestials, Ilara explained, her wizened form seeming to flicker with barely contained energy. They were thought to be extinct, wiped out in the Great Purge that led to our ancestors' downfall. Elias felt a chill run down his spine. Let me guess, your people's benevolent rule wasn't so benevolent after all. Zara's expression was grim. The Void Harbingers are beings of pure quantum energy. They exist in multiple realities simultaneously. Our ancestors saw them as a threat to their power and sought to eradicate them from every possible timeline. Well, Elias said, a hint of gallows humor in his voice, looks like they missed a few. As if in response to his words, the lead harbinger ship fired. A beam of writhing darkness lanced out, striking Celestia's planetary shields. The entire planet shuddered. Shields at 60% and falling. Vox called out, his multiple hands flying over the controls. Their weapons are facing through our defenses somehow. Elias's mind raced. Quantum energy, multiple realities, an idea began to form, wild and desperate. Zara, the celestial bonding we underwent, it changed me, didn't it? I can feel it, like there's more of me somehow. Zara nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. The great joining. It altered your quantum signature, attuned you to the fabric of reality itself. Then maybe, Elias said, his heart pounding, just maybe, I can communicate with them. Lord Vexer, who had been uncharacteristically quiet until now, scoffed. Communicate? With those abominations? They're here to destroy us, you fool. No, Ilara interjected, her ancient eyes fixed on Elias with an intensity that made him squirm. The Starborn speaks wisdom. The prophecies foretold this, a bridge between realities, a voice that could speak to the void. Another blast rocked the planet. Whatever you're going to do, Vox shouted, do it fast. Shields at 40%. Elias took a deep breath, centering himself. I need to be closer. Can we get me on one of our ships? Zora's eyes widened in alarm. Elias, no, it's too dangerous. He took her hands in his, marveling at how natural it felt now, this connection between them. Trust me, my quantum queen. This is why I'm here. This is what it means to be starborn. Moments later, Ilias found himself aboard the Starweaver, the ship that had started this whole incredible journey. As they sped towards the Harbinger fleet, he reached out with his mind, feeling for the strange new awareness that had blossomed within him since the joining. Void Harbingers, he called out, not with his voice, but with the very essence of his being. I am Elias Chen, starborn of Earth and Celestia. I seek Pali. For a heart-stopping moment, there was no response. Then reality itself seemed to ripple and tear. A figure materialized on the bridge of the Starweaver, a being of shifting darkness and swirling light, its form constantly fluctuating between states of matter and energy. Starborn, it spoke, its voice resonating on frequencies Elias could feel in his bones. You dare to call us by the name our OPPRESSO was gave us. Elias swallowed hard, forcing himself to meet the being's gaze, or what he thought was its gaze. I meant no offense. What would you prefer to be called? The being seemed to consider this, its form swirling more rapidly. We are THEQUNTUMTLACTIV, and you, STRBORN, are ANANONALOI. You exist in both a singular and multiple states. A gift of the celestial bonding, Elias explained, but more importantly, a sign that things have changed. The Celestials are no longer the conquerors you knew. We've instituted a democracy, ended the tyranny of the past. Pretty wordies, the collective responded, echoing Vex's earlier skepticism. But wordies cannot undo eons of sesufaioring, of being hunted he was realities. Elias felt a surge of empathy for these beings, hunted and persecuted across dimensions. You're right. Words aren't enough. But maybe I can show you. Without fully understanding what he was doing, Elias reached out, not with his hands, but with his newly awakened quantum senses. He felt himself expanding, his consciousness spreading across multiple realities, touching the very fabric of the universe. And suddenly, he was everywhere and everywhere at once. He saw the rise and fall of the celestial empire, the suffering of the quantum collective, the potential futures branching out before them. But more than that, he saw the interconnectedness of all things, the delicate balance of the cosmic dance. The quantum collective reeled, overwhelmed by the onslaught of information and emotion. How is this possible? Because, Elias gasped, struggling to maintain the connection, we're not so different, you and I. We're all part of the same cosmic tapestry. And together, we can weave a new future. As the visions faded, Elias found himself back on the bridge of the Starweaver, drenched in sweat and trembling from exertion. The representative of the quantum collective regarded him with what he could only describe as awe. Starborn, it intoned, its voice softer now, almost reverent. You have shown us a truth we had forgotten. Perhaps there is hope for coexistence after all. The attacks on Celestia ceased. In the days that followed, a tentative peace was brokered. The quantum collective, no longer forced to hide in the shadows of reality, began to share their unique perspective and abilities with the Celestials. and the Celestials, humbled by the revelation of their past sins, committed themselves fully to the path of democracy and equality. As for Elias and Zara, they found themselves at the center of a new galactic order. Celestia became a beacon of hope, a shining example of what was possible when different species, different realities, came together in harmony. You know, Elias mused one evening as they stood on a balcony overlooking the glittering capital. When I was a kid dreaming of alien life, I never imagined it would lead to all this. Zara leaned into him, her warmth a constant reminder of how far they'd come. Oh, and what did you imagine? Elias grinned. Honestly, I was hoping for a little green man to show up and give me a ride in a flying saucer. Zara's laughter, melodious and free, rang out across the night sky. Well, my love, I'd say you got the adventure you were looking for, and then some. As they gazed up at the stars, now filled with promise rather than peril, Elias felt a sense of peace wash over him. He was starborn, bridging worlds and realities, and with Zara by his side, there was no challenge too great, no cosmic mystery they couldn't unravel together. The universe, in all its infinite possibilities, stretched out before them, and their story, like the cosmic dance itself, was only just beginning.